stay for the ghost stories, don't leave. Stay right here. Take a little break after Rawhide and Lace, and then the ghost. Cantwell from Logan, Utah. Thank you very much. How many of you were here last year when I was here? Any repeats? A few of you? Oh, yes, and art counts too. Okay. And as far as the storytelling after goes, the ghost stories, we had a surprisingly good time last night. And I just want you to be thinking ahead. If it's been a while since you listened to spooky stories, we'd love to have you stay. And if you know of some that you would like to share with us, we're going to open that up tonight too. And last year we had some people that at first they didn't think they dared. And then as the evening went on, they decided, hey, I'd like to share that. And so we had some great times, and if you would like to stay after, we would love to have you. I've got some stories, and I've got some, I don't know whether I'd categorize it as a story. I've got a page out of my diary and a few things like that that I'd like to share with you. Now, this first story I want to tell you is the story of Romeo and Juliet, with apologies to William Shakespeare, by Andy Griffith, in his salad days. And the story starts out, this here story's about Romeo and Juliet, that there boy and girl, they was in love of one another. And it was the real thing, too. I mean, it would have been real good, except that their daddies didn't like one another. Well, Juliet's daddy wanted to have a fancy dress ball, and he sent out invitations to everybody in the whole town, except that none of Romeo's people got their invitations. But some of Romeo's buddies, they heard about the fancy ball, and so they went to Romeo and they gave him a double dirty dog dare. They says, we dare you to put on a costume and crash Juliet's party. Well, he was a kind of a spunky boy, old Romeo was, and so he took him up on it. He put on a costume, he crashed the party, he was there, everything was going fine, and all of a sudden he looked up and he saw the most beautiful girl coming down the stairs. She was gorgeous. It's the first time he'd ever seen her. It was Juliet. And he went right into a soliloquy right there on the spot. And it wasn't about doing or not doing. I mean, it wasn't about being or not being. It was about doing or not doing. And I tell you, the do's went out over the don'ts. And what he done is he grabbed Juliet by the hand, and he was leading her out into the backyard. And we'll never know what they was going to do out there, because at about that point, Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, recognized Romeo for who he was, and he come up on him and was trying to pick a fight. And Juliet's daddy didn't want no bloodshed right there in the living room, and so what he done is he sent Romeo home. He said, get on home, you wild boy, you. Well, Romeo left the party, but he didn't quite go right on home. What he done is he hid out in the yard till the party was over. And when all the guests had gone home, he pokes his head out and starts looking around. And way off in the yonder, he sees this light that comes on. And he says to himself, he says, hark! What light from yonder window shines? And wouldn't you know it, about that time, Juliet stands out of her bedroom window out on the back stoop. And she's looking at the moon, and she's looking at the stars, and she's caught up in the moment, you see. And she has herself a soliloquy, too. And in that soliloquy, she says something about, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? And he pokes his head up out of the bushes and says, I'm right here! Wouldn't you know it, as like it happened, a great big old pea vine was a-growing up right to where Juliet was a-standing. He clumb up it. He hadn't been there a few minutes until he asked her to marry him, which just goes to show he was an honorable type of boy. And she said when, and he said now, which goes to show that he weren't up there for no light courting. He wanted to get on with it. Well, back in them days, the reason they lived in castles was because they had so many people to put up. They had so many people in that castle, they kept a preacher on duty day and night. His name was Friar Lawrence. And they went on down and woke up Friar Lawrence and told him what they wanted to do. And he thought about it for a minute. He thought that was all right. So he married him right there on the spot. Now, folks, the problem was, where was they going to spend the night, things being the way they was, you know? Friar Lawrence thought for a minute, and he finally decided maybe it'd be best for Romeo to go on home alone that night. Now, folks, Romeo didn't take too hot to that idea. But he finally gave in, and he went on home. In fact, he figured he better leave town for a couple of days until things blow over. And so he went on home. Juliet went on back. Wouldn't you know it, right after that, her mama decided it was high time for Juliet to get married to a feller named Paris. What was she going to do? She didn't want two husbands. Romeo was all she could handle with all the cooking and the cleaning. And so she went right back to Friar Lawrence and says, "What you to do?" Here's what he done. He slipped her a Mickey. He gave her a potion. She took it on home, and that night she drunk it, and she fell right across her bed. The next morning, all of her family thought she was dead. So they had a big, beautiful funeral for poor Juliet, and they put her in her family tomb. And she was totally surrounded by all of her relatives and ancestors in various stages of decomposure. Wouldn't you know it, just before Friar Lawrence could get word to Romeo that Juliet wasn't really dead, some of them mean boys from that town got to Romeo and told him that she was dead. He figured life didn't hold nothing for him, and so he went out and bought himself a can of Drano. And he went on over to the family tomb, and he walked in there, and there he sees Juliet laid out on that slab, surrounded by all of her stinky relatives. And he says, "Oh, my love, oh, my wife," and he drunk the Drano. And then he said, "With this kiss, I die." And he flopped over dead right across her lap. Now, he was kind of a big boy for his age, old Romeo was, and the impact of him falling across her like that woke her up. As she sits up and she don't know what's going on, she looks and there's her husband laying dead across her lap. She figured life don't hold nothing for her, so she takes out Romeo's dagger and runs herself through, and she expired. Now, the moral to the story is this, folks. If you got yourself a boy and he likes a girl, what you don't like, or the other way around, the best thing for you to do is if you don't want the expense of a double funeral, you better just let them have the cheap wedding. I had the strangest dream last night. I dreamed I was a fish. Here's how the dream went. It was on February the 29th, and I was driving along in downtown Atlantis, and I had just taken my sister to the dock. She had a sore trout. My Barracuda was in the shop, and I was driving a rented Stingray, and it was overheating, so I pulled into a Shell station. The guy said I had a bad seal. I says, "Well, spank it." "How long will it take?" He said, "It'll take a while." And so I walked over to this place they called the Oyster Bar. It was a real dive. But I knew the owner. He used to play for the Dolphins. I walked in, I said, "Hi, Gil!" You have to holler, he's hard of hearing. Gil wasn't doing too well. I mean, he was barely keeping his head below water. And I bellied up to the sandbar, and he fixed me my usual, a rusty nail, hold the grunion, shaken not stirred, with a peanut butter and jellyfish sandwich on the side, heavy on the mako. I slipped Gil a fin, on purpose. I even put a sand dollar in the box for Jerry's squids. Just for the halibut. Hey, the place was packed that night, I'll tell you. We were packed in there like sardines. Everybody was there to hear the big band sounds of Tommy Dorsal and his orchestra. Oh, what soul. Tommy was rocking the place with a very popular tuna entitled Salmon Enchanted Evening. Yeah, and the stage was completely surrounded by schooner groupers. I think they were there to hear the bass player. And one of those cute little yellowtails was giving me the eye. And I figured, here's my chance to have a little fun. I lobster in the crowd for a minute. But I finally floundered. Boy, what a conversational. She was no bubblehead. She was deep. I mean, I couldn't fathom half of what she said. But she seemed to be under a lot of pressure. She did mention her father was a famous brine surgeon. And boy, could she drink. She drank a lot. And I said, "Hey, baby, what's your sign?" And she said, "Aquarium." I said, "Great, let's get tanked." I invited her up to my place for a little midnight baits and to listen to my Ethel Mermaid records. I said, "Come on, baby, it'll only take a few minutes." She gave me the old line, "Not tonight, I've got a headache." And she did, too, because just about that time, in walked the biggest, meanest-looking haddock I'd ever seen come down the pike. And he had muscles all over him, And he walked up to me and he said, "You listen here, Shrimp, I don't want you trolling around here no more." But crap. Boy, was he steamed. I could see the anchor in his eye. I looked him in the eye and I said, "Abalone. You're just being shellfish." Well, Gil knew there was going to be trouble. He was already on the phone to the Cods. That haddock hit me with a sucker punch, but I came back with a left hook. And he just eeled over. I know it was a fluke, but there he was, flat as a mackerel. Helpless. Hey, that yellowtail was pretty impressed with me for landing her boyfriend like that. She comes over to me, she says, "Hey, big boy, you're a pretty game fish. What's your name?" I said, "Marlin." From then on, we had a whale of a time. I took her out to dinner, I took her out dancing, bought her a bouquet of seaweed. And then I took the plunge. I said, "You're shark cute. I think you'd marry me." And she looked at me coyly and she said, "Moby I will, Moby I won't." And then I woke up. There's a story that some of you might have heard. It's about a little old English lady, lived all by herself, a maiden lady in London, England, many years ago. She had always loved Switzerland and the Alps, and she wanted to live there someday. On one of her vacations, she went over to Switzerland, and she started looking around for an apartment to live in. Nobody there spoke her language except for the village schoolmaster. The village schoolmaster helped her find an apartment. She liked it, so she went back to London, England to pack her bags and moved to Switzerland. As soon as she got to London, she realized, wait a minute, I didn't notice a bathroom in that apartment. Or she called it a water closet. And so she hurried and wrote a letter back to the village schoolmaster in Switzerland. And she used the initials WC for water closet. Well, when he got the letter, he couldn't understand what WC stood for. Just then he looks up and he sees the parish priest walking his way, motions him over, says, "What does WC stand for?" Parish priest said, "Wesleyan Church." Oh, okay. And so the schoolmaster wrote the letter of reply back to the little old lady school teacher, and here's the letter. "Dear Madam, the WC is situated 9 miles from the house in the center of a beautiful grove of trees. It is capable of holding 350 people at a time and is open on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays each week. A large number of folks attend during the summer months, so it is suggested you go early, although there is plenty of standing room. Some folks like to take their lunch and make a day of it, especially on Thursday when there is organ accompaniment. The acoustics are very good and everyone can hear the slightest sound. It may be of interest to you to know that my daughter was married in our WC. It was there she met her husband. We hope you'll be there in time for our bazaar to be held very soon. The proceeds will go towards the purchase of plush seats, which the folks agree are a long-felt need, as the present seats all have holes in them. My wife is rather delicate and therefore she cannot attend regularly. It's been 6 months since the last time she went. Naturally, it pains her very much to go more often. Well, I shall close now with a desire to accommodate you in every way possible, and I will be happy to save you a seat down front or near the door, whichever you prefer. Sincerely, the schoolmaster. Communications everything. How many of you here are deer hunters? Raise your hand if you're a deer hunter. I want to see how many deer hunters we got here. How many of you used to be deer hunters and aren't anymore? Well, we got just about that many. I'm in that rank right there. And anytime I get the urge to go deer hunting, all I do is pull a page out of my diary. I kept a diary the last time I went deer hunting. All I got to do is read it. Here we go. First day of deer season, 2:30 a.m. Throw everything except the kitchen sink in the pickup truck. 3 a.m. Leave for the deep woods. 3:15 a.m. Drive back home, pick up gun. 3:30 a.m. Drive like crazy to get to the woods before daylight. 4 a.m. Set up camp, forgot the tent. 4:30 a.m. Head into the woods. 6:05 a.m. See 6 deer and elk. 6:07 a.m. Click. 6:08 a.m. Load gun. While watching deer and elk go over hill. 8 a.m. Head back to camp. 9 9 a.m., still looking for camp. 10 a.m., realize you don't know where camp is. Noon, fire gun for help. Eat wild berries. 12:20 p.m., strange feeling in stomach. 12:30 p.m., realize you ate poison berries. 12:45 p.m., rescued. 12:55 p.m., rush to hospital, have stomach pumps. 3 o'clock p.m., arrive back at camp. 3:30 p.m., leave camp to kill deer and elk. 4 p.m., return to camp for bullets. See partners elk. 4:05 p.m., load gun, leave camp again. 5 p.m., empty gun on squirrel that's bugging you. Squirrel runs away. 6 p.m., arrive at camp. See deer and elk grazing at camp. 6:01, load gun. 6:02, fire gun. 6:03, one dead pickup truck. 6:05, hunting partner returns to camp dragging deer. 6:06, express strong desire to shoot hunting partner. 6:07, fall into fire. 6:10, change clothes, throw burned ones into fire. 6:14 p.m., realize wallets and money were in burning pants. 6:15 p.m., take pickup, leave partner and his deer and elk in the woods. 6:25 p.m., pickup boils over, hole shot and block. 6:26, start walking. 6:30, stumble and fall, drop gun in the mud. 6:35 p.m., meet bear. 6:36, take aim. 6:37, fire gun, blow up barrel, plug with mud. 6:38, have accident.
Yeah.
6:39, climb tree. 7 p.m., bear climbs tree. 7:01, have another accident. 7:02, fall out of tree, hit the ground running. 8 a.m., arrive home. 8:01, phone butcher to order 100 pounds of hamburger. I don't know where this place is, but there is a Catholic monastery. We know where the monks go to stay. And it's situated at the top of some mountains at a very remote location, very inaccessible. And the monks are there year-round, day in, day out, and they have all taken an oath of silence, a vow of silence. They can only say one word every day at a certain time of the day, and they all say it in unison, in 4-part harmony even. Now, every morning, all of these monks, as if on a silent command, are gliding through these stone corridors with their cowls up over their head, and it's like they know exactly where to go. Nothing is being said, very quiet. And they file silently into this beautiful chapel. It's ancient, hundreds of years old. And they sit down silently on the benches, and they all look at this stained glass window that is covering the entire front of this chapel. And they watch in the darkness, and they watch. And finally, as the morning rays, the first morning rays of the sun, strike the stained glass window at the front of the chapel is bathed in beautiful colors, every color in the rainbow, totally bathing that chapel in the most beautiful lights. And as if on the same silent command, they all stand at the same time, and in 4-part harmony they chant the one word they are allowed to say each day, and it is morning. And then they turn around and they glide out. And they spend the rest of the day tromping grapes or translating the Bible, I don't know. For 200 years this was going on. Every morning they do the same thing. One morning, there they sit in the chapel. The sun comes up, hits the stained glass window, colors all over the chapel, they all stand up, 4-part harmony, morning. And just as they're turning to leave, one monk in the very back jumps up on a bench and says, evening! And the head monk down front turns around and goes, some monk chants at evening. Who said boo? You're going to tell it tomorrow, You know, communication is everything in this world. If you don't believe me, envision, if you will, President Bush picking up the red phone, thinking he's ordering a pizza, and blowing up the world. Just because of a communication, just a small error, you know, he didn't communicate. And there are all kinds of people who have all kinds of problems because they don't communicate. Now, what I have here, I must tell you, I did not make these up, neither did anybody else. These are real letters written by people to illustrate the fact that they are not communicating. Why don't they just put down what's in their head? Now, I've got a brother who is the principal at Morton Downey Junior High School. And he has compiled for me a list of actual letters, notes, sent in with their kids the day after the kid was absent, excusing that kid's absence. And they're not communicating. Like, here's one lady who writes, Mary Ann was absent December 11th through the 16th because she had a fever, a sore throat, headache, and upset stomach. Her sister was also sick. I wasn't feeling the best either, sore throat and fever. There must be something going around. Her father even got hot last night. Dear school, please accuse John for being absent on January 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, 32nd, and 33rd. Thank you. Please execute Johnny for being. It was his father's fault. This mother's not a happy camper. Mary could not come to school yesterday because she was bothered by very close veins. My daughter was absent from school yesterday because she was very tired. She spent the weekend with the Marines. Turns out she was in the reserves. Please excuse Joyce from physical education. She fell out of a tree and misplaced her hip. The trunks just won't fit if you don't have that hip right there. Please excuse Ray Friday from school. He has very loose bowels. George was absent yesterday because he had a stomach. Ralph was absent yesterday because he had a sore trout. Please excuse Sarah for being absent. She was sick and I had her shot. The last letter from the parent. As it turns out, poor Willie, he had been homesick, and the mom didn't want to send him back the next day because it was a rainy day and his overshoes had holes all over them. But that's not what she put on paper. Here's what she wrote. Please excuse Willie. He couldn't come to school yesterday because he had diarrhea and his boots leaked. Keep him home. Keep Willie home. Now, it's not just parents. When people get in traffic accidents, and heaven forbid that should happen to any of us, but they get a little bit rattled, don't they? And they're writing down things that they're not real. They wouldn't do it under other circumstances. But they put down some of the screwiest things on these accident report forms, like, coming home, I drove into the wrong house and collided with a tree I don't have. These are real letters by people. A truck backed through my windshield and into my wife's face. There's a big lady. I pulled away from the side of the road, took a look at my mother-in-law, and drove over the embankment. I'd been driving my car for 4 years when I fell asleep at the wheel and had an accident. Hey, if I've been riding with a guy that's been driving for 4 years, I'd be having the accident. You got to make them pull over and sleep every 2 years, whether they think they need it or not. Real letters. To avoid hitting the bumper of the car in front of me, I struck the pedestrian. This guy's obviously had to do business with the local wrecking yard before. An invisible car came out of nowhere, slammed into my vehicle, and disappeared. I was thrown from my car as I left the road and was later found in a ditch by some stray cows. Oh, whoa, the lamb. The pedestrian had no idea what direction to go, so I ran over him. Besides, right. They shouldn't allow people like that in the crosswalks. The light was green and I was late for electrolysis. So they did. This man was short but sweet. The pedestrian ran for the pavements, but I got him. Well, the gentleman behind me struck me on the backside. He then went to rest in the bush with just his rear end showing. Yeah. I was on my way to the doctor with rear end trouble when my universal joint gave way, causing me to have an accident. And to sum up, these are real letters. You got to remember that these are real letters. People, when they write to the welfare office, trying to figure out where's their check gone and what have they got to do to get on welfare payments and so forth, bless their hearts, they don't put down what they mean to put down. Like this lady writes, I want my money as quick as I can get it. I'm sick and I've been in bed with the doctor for 2 weeks and he doesn't do me any good. If things don't improve, I'll have to send for another doctor. Maybe a specialist. Catch me after. I am forwarding my marriage certificate and 6 children. I have 7 children, but 1 died, which was baptized on a half sheet of paper. Mrs. Jones has not had any clothes for a year and has been visited regularly by the clergy. I'm happy to report that my husband, who is missing, is dead. I'm forwarding my marriage certificate and 3 children, one of which is a mistake, as you can see. Oh, please find for certain if my husband is dead. The man I'm now living with can't eat or do anything until he knows. Unless I get my husband's money pretty soon, I will be forced to live an immortal life. You have changed my little boy to a girl. Will it make any difference? In accordance with your instructions, I have given birth to twins in the enclosed envelope. Came with postage due, all that. And finally, I am very much annoyed to find that you have branded my son as illiterate. This is a dirty lie. I was married a week before he was born. People are not communicating. Dear sirs, in response to your request for additional information, I have written in block number 3 of the accident reporting form, trying to do the job alone as the cause of my accident. You said in your letter that I should explain more fully. I trust that the following details will be sufficient. I am a bricklayer by trade. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I discovered that I had about 500 pounds of bricks left over. Well, rather than carry the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel using a pulley, which fortunately was attached to the side of the building. Securing the rope at ground level, I went up to the roof. I swung the barrel out, and I loaded the bricks into it. Then I went back down to the ground floor, and I untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the bricks. You'll note in block number 11 of the accident reporting form that I weigh 165 pounds. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rapid rate up the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming down. This explains the fractured skull and broken collarbone. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent not stopping until the fingers of my hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. Fortunately, by this time, I had regained my presence of mind, and I was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of my pain. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of bricks hit the ground, and the bottom fell out of the barrel. Devoid of the weight of the bricks, the barrel now weighed approximately 50 pounds. I refer you again to my weight in Block 11. As you might imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles and the lacerations on my legs and lower body. The encounter with the barrel slowed me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell onto the pile of bricks. And fortunately, only 3 vertebrae were broken. I am sorry to report, however, that as I lay there on the bricks, in excruciating pain, unable to stand, unable to move, and watching the empty barrel 6 stories above me, I again lost my presence of mind and let go of the rope. Came back down on me and broke both my legs. I hope I've furnished the information you require as how the accident occurred. I never was a Hee-Haw fan. But I became an Archie Campbell fan when I became a disc jockey, and I started looking for funny music to play on the radio. Somebody handed me an Archie Campbell record and it said, Render Sell. And the flip side was that one, You Were Gone, you know, where, oh, where are you tonight? Well, I played it and I fell in love with it. I thought that was great. And as I would get invited to go out and do a little storytelling here and there, I started including that in the program. I worked it out and I made a few changes in it. But it's called Rendersella, and Archie's gone now, but I guess this is just my way of saying thanks, Archie. Once upon a time, you'll notice I start talking like Archie right away. Once upon a time in a Corinth country, there lived a beautiful girl, and her name was Rendersella. Rendersella lived with her muggly other and her 2 sad blisters. And she had to do all the work. She had to flop the moor, she had to mook the keels and dosh the wishes, she had to deed the fog, she had to wean the clindos. In the winter when it snowed, she had to double the shriveway. I tell you, it's a good thing they didn't have a baby at that house, because she'd have had the bangs and the chavy, too. Well, there also lived in that same Corinth country a Pransome Hints, and his name was Chinks Prarning. And this Pransome Hints wanted to have a fancy fall so he could check out that year's crop of mare fadings. And so he sent out invitations to all the people for riles and riles a mile, especially the pitch people. And when Rendersella's muggly other and her 2 sickly usters got their invitations to the fancy fall, they sent out the war to go downtown to buy some fancy clothes to wear for the fancy fall. But Rendersella couldn't go shopping with them because all she had on was some old ruddy dags. Got them from Ezeret Industries. Easy Greer. She was a sucker. And she just cat right down and stride. And she stride and she stride. But pretty quick, the buds and the butterflies sang her a dance, sang her a song, and did her a dance. Made her feel a little bit better for now. Well, when the night of the fancy fall arrived, Rendersella, Stepliag Mother, and them 2 sad blisters, they dent out the war in their clue nose to go to fancy fall. And the stepliest of those 2 Ugg sisters actually turned around and tucked her stung out of Rendersella. That's all she could handle. She just, still standing there in those old ruddy dags, she just cat right down and started to shrine again. And she shrine and she shrine. I thought she was going to eye her cries out. But then a magical thing happened. Her Gary Mudfather appeared. And he boing, slapped her upside the head with his magic maw. And he said, Rendersella, you can go to the fancy fall now. And she looked, and right in front of her there was a keg boat pulled by hex-sight horses. I mean, it was a keg boat. It was made out of a gumpkin from the Pardon. And them Hickside horses were stick values. I mean, they could have been Budweiser Clydesdales. I don't know. And then she looked down. She was still wearing them same old ruddy dags. Had that Hissy Greer. She says, I still can't go. I got on these old ruddy dags. And so he slapped her upside on the other side of the head with his magic wand. You can't hit her on both sides. That's overdose, see. So he hit her on the other side of the head and bling! She looked down and she was wearing a gorgeous garment. Strapless. She said, all right! And she climbed into that kick boat and was all ready to say, giddy up. And that Gary Mudfather leaned in and said, now, Render Sally, you listen to me and you listen good. I rented that Fortress Cornwall from Renda Longstaff. And if it comes back late, I got to pay double. So if you ain't home by the Mocha Straight night, I'm going to turn you into a pumpkin. She said, all right. And so she took off for the Bancy Fall. When she arrived at the palace, the Pransome Hinch dead her at the moor, because he'd been looking through a wooden window. And he seen her pull up. And he dead her at the moor, and he couldn't help but notice she was wearing transparent trews. Never seen a girl like that. And they danced all night. They ranced around the dew. Night under the roses of the Muggly Other and her two sad blisters. Of course, they didn't recognize her, because she didn't have on those old ruddy dags and that Hissy Greer. Plus, she was wearing a mask, just like the Lone Ranger. And they ranced around the dew, and they lily-puffed. And just as he was ready to list her on the kicks, what did Render Sally hear? Bong, 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 bong. The Mocha of Strychnine! She roared across the tube, and she staced down the rears. Just as she beats the rottom, she slopped her gripper. Well, that Pransome Hinch picked up that slant-staring tripper. And he heaved a heavy sigh. Oh, and he went back into the Bancy Fall, but none of them other mare pages could even turn his head. The very next day, he went all over that Cadget Kingdom, looking for the beautiful girl who would slop her dripper. Finally, he got to Render Silla's house, and he tried that slipper on her Muggly Other. And it fit to death. And he tried it on each one of her two-steply other sisters. And it fit to death. Too many forms and cunions on their pinky teeth. And they tried it on Render Silla's foot, and it fit in. And they got married, and they laughed heavily after every word. And the story to the Maury is this: if you want to lull in fun with a Pransome Hinch, don't forget to slop your dripper. I left my Sam McGee hat home, but I'll do the Sam McGee for you right now. And it's a story all about up in the Yukon. Now, picture yourself, if you will. You're up in the Yukon, you're a newcomer there, and you ask the general storekeeper, what's going on? That'll do, thank you. And you ask the storekeeper, what's going on around here? And the storekeeper says, oh, not much, most of the boys hang out around the saloon. Why don't you go on over there? If you get on over to the saloon, why don't you ask them if they know anything about Sam McGee? Okay, I will. And so you go over to the saloon, you're in a raging blizzard, you can hear the honky-tonk piano, you can hear the laughter, and as you open those doors, the saloon is bathed in warm yellow lights, and it's warm, and it's jovial, and it's friendly, and you walk in there, and everybody's playing cards and laughing and dancing around and having a great time, and you say, anybody know anything about Sam McGee? And boom, everything is silent. And everybody's looking at you, what did I say? What did I say? And then after a couple of seconds, everybody very silently, reverently almost, grabs a mug of something cold or a cup of something hot, and they go sit down on cracker barrels and shipping crates and stools, and they look at you for a second, and then everybody turns and looks at this lone, solitary figure who's leaning up against the bar, and as he turns around to look at you, you know he's been up there just a little bit too long. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the man who moils for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that make your blood run cold. The northern lights are seen queer sights. But the queerest I ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge when I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows.
Why he left his home in the south to roam around the foe, nobody knows. He was always cold, and the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell. Though he'd often say, in his homely way, that he'd sooner live in hell. Well, on a Christmas day, we was mushing our way o'er the Dawson Trail. Talkie, you're cold, through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. And if our eyes we closed, the lashes froze. Until sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed, and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe, he turns to me, and Cap, says he, I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. And then he said with a sort of a moan, it's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled, clean through to the bone. Do you think being dead? It's my awful dread of the icy grave that pays. So I want you to swear that foul or fair you'll cremate these last remains. Well, Pal's last need is a thing to heed, and I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the crack of dawn. Ooh, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh, and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse is all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't the breath in that land of death, and I hurried on, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and brave, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate these last remains. Well, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. And every night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring, out their woes to the homeless snows, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow. And on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, but I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw it try. She was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought of it. And I looked at my frozen chum. And then here, said I with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Oh, some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. And some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped that fuel up higher. Ooh, the flames just soared. That furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike. Or didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the huskies howled, and the heavens scowled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke, in an inky cloak, went streaking down the sky. I don't know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear. But the stars came out, and they danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked. In the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam. looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see for a mile. And he said, "Please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and the storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm." Oh, there are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. If the Arctic trails have their secret tales, it'd make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights. But the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge when I cremated Sam.
Another big